Hi there, everybody. My name is Mark Palermo, and this is episode 4 of the Lawrence History Project. Now, today I have a guest with me. Is Thomas Delisle. Tom has been taking pictures of Lawrence for more than 60 years. And we are going to tell you the stories and show you the pictures so that you can get started on your understanding of history. A great way to understand history is start with what you got and walk your way back. All right? Because what you see is visceral and it's real. Get the stories behind it. So we have the stories. And Tom, I want to welcome you to the program once
Thank
again.
you, Mark. Good to be back again.
And Tom is more like a co-host here. And I'm really glad to have him. He's a great resource and a lot of knowledge. So without further ado, Cassie, could we see our first picture here? Oh, now that is kind of typical of Lawrence. This is the Lawrence that we grew up in. And this is not a 3-decker. This is a 4-decker.
4-decker. Yep.
This is, obviously, this must be from the archives.
These are from the majority of these,
Yeah.
all the black and whites here,
Mhm.
I think are from the archives. Again, sponsored by the city of Lawrence, right prior to urban renewal. A lot of these are from the neighborhoods of Chestnut Street, Maple, and Oak.
Mm-hmm.
And to their credit, the city took photographs of the front of the buildings and the rear of the buildings. This is obviously the rear of a building. I think it might have been on Chestnut. The archives have all the addresses, of the streets and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But it was, it looks older than it was. I'm sure they were brought down in the late 60s,
Mhm.
but they were probably built in the 30s or 40s, if not earlier.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They were built rapidly,
Mhm.
because of a massive influx of immigrants to work in the mills. And the 3-deckers evolved as a particular template. They seem to work economically. You bring a plumber in and he builds a bathroom one right on top of the other. There's no
Mhm.
excess plumbing. The kitchen one right on top of the other.
Yep.
And I think that was kind of novel at the time. Gas lights. They were lit by gas lights. And you
Right.
can imagine some of the horrible fires there must have been.
Mhm.
Lighting with gas, the same gas you're using for your stove, you're using to light up your house. And electricity didn't come in till the 20s, late 20s.
Mhm.
Everybody got it then. 3-deckers. That was a 4-decker, and you did see them occasionally, the 4-decker.
Yeah. There was a 4-decker hotel on corner of Maple and Short Street. I forget
Maple
the
and
name of it, but
Short,
someone
yeah,
said there was a
yeah.
hotel there.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
I don't think they wanted to go up more than 4 flights, because they were wood frames.
Mm-hmm.
And after you get up beyond 4, and it's all wood, in those days, probably no building codes, or no really effective building codes. I think they were probably afraid to go up more than 4. Probably something happened.
Mm-hmm.
Could we see the next one, Cassie? That's the same one we just had. It says Dexters Catering. Oh,
There we go.
I picked this out because look at how close these places were. He seems happy,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that group of people, like our grandparents' age, they came over from Europe and wherever they came from, Canada. They loved this country. They were so patriotic,
Mm-hmm.
and they just loved. You can imagine the misery they escaped. But look at the clothes. This is another thing you see. No clothes dryer.
Oh, no.
Oh, no, they probably had clothes dryers.
Maybe a washboard, too.
Oh,
Forget
yeah.
a washing machine.
Yeah, people forget what a liberation from household drudgery that was for women.
Mm-hmm.
Because before the washing machine, which came in really in the 30s, women had to wash clothes by hands.
Mm-hmm.
Washboard and a big bar of stout soap. And it was hard work, really hard work. Okay, can we go on to the next, please? Do you know what that is?
I don't. I know,
Yeah.
again, it's in that area. A lot of these are taken between Lawrence Street and Jackson Street,
Mm-hmm.
or just on the other side of Lawrence Street going towards
Mm-hmm.
Hampshire Street.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I knew where that was, but that looks like the 1950s with those those
Yeah,
cars.
yeah.
Maybe middle 50s.
Yeah, I would say that's it. The second one up is an Oldsmobile, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
56, maybe? 56 Oldsmobile?
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah. Because in those days, they weren't really fancy cars. There was just Oldsmobile, if you had a little money. If you had more money than that, a Cadillac. Cadillac was the ultimate
The ultimate.
in class, you know. So if you had a Cadillac, that was a real stud car.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, next, please. I suspect that was the corner of Broadway and Essex.
Exactly, yep.
Yeah.
The Ryan's Drugs. Yep.
That came down right about 1970.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I came home from college. I hitchhiked all the way home. I got about 5 or 6 rides. And then I got stuck there.
Oh.
I only had about a mile to get home,
Mm-hmm.
and I couldn't get a ride. I ended up walking home. And one guy yelled out the window, cussing at me, "Get a haircut."
Yeah.
That's the only
Hippie perversion, you.
So, cursing me. I said, "Well, I'm back home."
You're back. Welcome to Lawrence.
But that was a really big building. Remember that?
That was, yes.
It does. We
It
just
wrapped
got
around
a-
the,
yeah, it
the-
wrapped
the-
around the Lawrence
the
Street
corner.
side. That was a really nice building.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I don't think they replaced it with anything. But a few years later, maybe 4 or 5 years later, there's an apartment. I think it's public housing. There,
It's
at the corner of
yeah, good
Essex and
size,
Broadway.
good size.
Yeah.
Public housing there.
And the next, what do we have here? It looks like, yes. I think I took a photo. I think that's from Joe.
Mm-hmm.
That's a photo of the Armory, the old Lawrence Armory.
The Armory, yep.
And inside, they had cannons, guns, shells.
Oh,
Remember that? We used to play
enormous.
basketball in there?
Yeah, we practiced basketball in grammar school,
Yeah,
sixth grade. Howitzers, I remember howitzers there.
Yeah, I do
and
remember
it was
that.
cavernous.
Yeah.
It was cavernous.
You know, I think every city had one of these armories.
Mhm.
I think what were they preparing? Well, I guess they wanted to be prepared for war. This was a Cold War, too.
Yeah.
And, you know, the country ran on a certain level of, it was fueled by a certain level of paranoia.
Mm-hmm.
The Russians could be coming over here. You want to be ready. So right downtown,
Right there.
they had
Across-
howitzers,
yeah.
ready to battle the Russians.
Yeah,
Oh,
right
man.
across from the Clatter and the backside
That's
of old
right, yeah.
Bill
And
Peters.
there's a credit union there now.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go inside the credit union, Lawrence Fireman's Credit Union, if you go inside, they have pictures of the old
The old
Armory.
Armory.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, next, please. Oh, the good old days. White men, colored men. I think I got this from Joe. And
This was from the archives.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, yeah.
So it looks like a construction project of some kind.
Yeah, it was by the canal, the North Canal.
Oh, was it? Yeah.
Right now, there's a nice museum, a contemporary museum, and the
Mhm.
Spigot Brewery is
Mhm.
right around this area.
Mhm.
They're actually doing some construction on there as we speak. But looking at the archives, it was from that area
Mhm.
by the canals.
It shows the internal construction of things like the ego, me and you, me and other. You know, the other is dirty.
Mm-hmm.
I remember reading before Las Vegas was integrated. Actually, it's Frank Sinatra.
Sinatra, yeah.
Sinatra
With Sammy
integrated.
Davis.
Not known as a social justice warrior at
Right.
all, but it was Sinatra that showed all the moguls.
Mhm.
Listen, there's only one color, and that's green. You
Right.
should be paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess he made him under. There was a African American movie star that was in Vegas, and this was before it was integrated.
Mm-hmm.
And she was in one of the really elegant hotels, and she went into the pool. And after she got out of the pool, customers complained they had to drain the pool, enormous pool, because
Yeah.
she had just swam in it. And it's ignorance.
Ignorance, yeah.
Ignorance is really has a very high cost.
Does it ever?
And it's very hurtful for people. And anyway, a lot could be said about that. But this is the Lawrence History Project, so we're bringing it to you unabashed,
Mm-hmm. Right.
undiapered, the way it was.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it's natural a lot of times for us old geezers to look back on history and say, oh, the good old days. But they weren't always so good, as you can see. There's good and bad, and it has to be taken, roses and the thorns all together
Yep.
to understand it. Okay, next. Oh, I had to crop this. I wish it were larger.
Mm-hmm.
This is, I think you mentioned this. I love this building. You see, it's a flower, this was right at the corner of Common and Lawrence Street.
Yes.
And it was so European. If you look very closely at that, you step down, it's almost in the basement.
Right,
to
I
those
had
shops.
forgotten that, you're
And
right.
it was so evocative to me of Europe,
Mhm.
Southern Europe.
Yes,
And you used to see a lot of stuff that was evocative of Europe when you're young.
mm-hmm.
Because let's say when we were 10 years old, we were like 1960. Somebody who was 70 years old probably came from Europe, or their parents did. And there was definitely a European here. And I loved how you stepped down into these little shops, the little dollhouse shops.
Mm-hmm. Exactly,
People weren't very tall back then in the old days.
right,
Even if you go back to 1950, basketball players were 6 feet, 6 feet
That was
tall,
considered
6 feet
tall.
1, you know? People weren't that big, and they were like little doll shops. And I just hated to see that get torn down, you know? But it did, and so charming. It seemed to have a Northern European, Germanic
The
air
vibe.
to it.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know if a building can have a soul. I suspect it can. But let's go to our next one. Oh, yes. This building, Joe was telling me, this was at the corner of Broadway and Essex. No, not Broadway, Lawrence
Lawrence
Street
and
and Essex,
Mm-hmm.
Across from the Bay State Building. And they burned in a terrible fire in 1940. Look at that magnificent
Magnificent,
building. Oh, my God. And that one, too, there was cantilever into the incline of a hill.
it was,
So
Mhm.
I think they like to do that. It's a shame that thing is gone. My God, can you imagine the office space they could have in there?
that was a
Uh,
presence too, because the Bay State was right across from that.
Mhm.
And on the old postcards, I think it says the tallest building north of Boston in Massachusetts.
Was that one?
Was the Bay State, I think.
Was the Bay State,
But
yeah.
that was right across the street from that, so that
Oh,
was,
yeah.
that was a power.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
corner.
It really was. Yeah. You see that in old pictures, even in the strike of 1912,
Mhm.
you'll see that at the corner, you know. I'd love to do another, as I said, I think I'd like to do another program just dedicated to the strike of 1912.
Oh,
So
yeah.
much
Plenty of
history.
photographs that,
So much history, so much,
archives.
a lot of it's been revised, too,
Mhm.
which goes to the heart of who gets to tell history.
Right,
My father always
the
said,
survivors.
you know, what if the Germans had
victors.
won the war, you know? How, and they're the ones that would be deciding who's committed war crimes.
Right.
You know, he said, geez, they would have had a Nuremberg trial for me, too.
Mm-hmm.
History really gets written by the victors and who happens to have the most power. But a really comprehensive view of history will take all of that into consideration. And that's what we hope to do. And next, please. Here's that same building. I thought it was in the 50s, but Joe
Mhm.
told me it was 1940. Look at the tremendous fire. I'll bet that was a gas fire.
Wow.
I'll bet that was a
Probably.
gas. I'll bet they were heating it with gas,
Mhm.
because that doesn't look like just a normal fire.
No, that's a blaze.
Oh man, look at that thing. That is just an inferno. Yeah, that's the same building, and that was
So much of Lawrence. Just yesterday, there was
Yeah.
the fire alarm going to Lawrence Street and Sunset Ave, old stomping grounds.
I remember that. I think I know where that is.
Yeah, that was
I
just
think I remember
yesterday.
there's a Hispanic market there,
Mhm.
not there?
Yep,
Oh,
yep.
yeah, I know where that is.
And there was a small shop there.
Mhm.
Back in the day, it was either like a fabric shop or a cleaner's.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember that building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, buildings are like people.
Yeah.
More coming in, others leaving. The whole world is a revolving door. revolving door, people and things and places. And here we are. And the next one, please, Cassie. Oh, this is kitty corner from the two shops that I told you that I fell in love with. Did you say this was a Cross Coal Company?
Cross Coal, yeah, this is on the corner of Lawrence and Carmen Street. And there was a huge chunk of anthracite coal. As I was telling you before we came on, it was about half the size of a Volkswagen. It was in the window, big glass window. It might be that window to the right of that door there. And the shop that you liked was the next one up, I think. There was
It's right around the
bridal
corner.
shop
Yeah,
and the
yeah.
religious
You can
articles.
see just the corner.
Just the
It says
corner.
Jeanette Leclerc's dress shop.
Mhm.
And then the religious articles
Yeah.
stores, yeah.
And then right after that was the Y,
That's right.
YMCA.
Yeah, that's right.
Right across from the Common.
A big piece, half the size of a Volkswagen, a piece of anthracite coal.
Yeah, that's, I never, yeah.
You know, they have two kinds of coal. You know,
Mhm.
one of them is, I forget which one.
Bituminous? I think,
Bituminous,
bituminous
And one of them is cheap, but it produced a lot of pollution.
dirty coal.
And the other one is cleaner.
Right.
And I remember that. I used to work for the electric company years ago, and they wouldn't allow them to burn one of them unless it was a rainy day or something.
Mhm.
I don't know how that gets rid of pollution, because it just washes the stuff.
Yeah, washing it from the atmosphere.
It cleans the air, but it dirties well, anyway. Next, please. Oh, okay. Hey, this is a family show. How'd that get in there, Tom?
PG-13.
Okay.
This isn't one of mine.
No, I confess. We're putting the call out here because if you grew up in Lawrence, you would see in the newspaper every weekend, Gloria is back. You'll remember and it was years and years
Yes.
went by. Gloria was back at the SAC, the Syrian American Club.
Mhm.
So obviously Middle Eastern descent and very buxom. And I remember Gloria at some kind of event at Central Catholic. My
Mhm.
parents were there. Every kids were there, parents were there. And Gloria came out and she was a belly dancer.
Mhm.
And we're not saying this is Gloria. We're just wondering if it could be. If anybody out there knows, would you let us know, all right? It's the email is very easy to remember. Lawrence History Project, all lowercase letters, lawrencehistoryproject@gmail.com. Let us know if that was indeed Gloria. But anyway, to continue the story,
Mhm.
Gloria danced at our, whatever the event was. I was about 14 or 15 years old. And she was very full-figured
Mhm.
and an amazing dancer. She's enchanting
Yeah.
and very erotic, but
Mhm.
always somehow
Sensual.
sensual and erotic, okay, but in good taste somehow.
Mhm.
You know, it was, people just understood that's the culture, the Middle
Right.
East. You know, that's...
Bishops
that's-
still would have the
Oh, I'm
dances
sure
downstairs,
oh,
the
I'm
belly
sure,
dances.
Yeah, I'm sure, yeah. It certainly would get you in the mood
Mhm.
without being over the line vulgar. And I wish people would understand the line between sensuality and vulgarity.
Exactly.
There's a fine line sometimes, well, not so fine, but
Distinct. It's a distinct line.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
it really is. Okay, next please. Oh, well, this has a history. You recognize that, don't you?
Yeah, in South Lawrence,
Yep.
I think the Diamond Brewery, was it?
Diamond Springs Brewery,
Diamond
and
Spring.
this is the home of the infamous Holohen's beer. And all I can tell you about this beer is it was cheap. How do I know?
Mhm.
Because I used to drink it, and all my buddies used to drink it, and we didn't have any money. We
Mhm.
were in college in Northern Essex. I went to Northern Essex in '69 and '70. We used to drink this stuff. So it had to be cheap.
Right.
But as I remember, it wasn't bad, you know.
Mhm.
Our standards were much lower. And it went out, I think, it's in the early '70s. Back then, again, we talked about modernity. People had a penchant for big-name, mass-produced beers, Budweisers and stuff. And they tended to get away from the locally produced beers. In the old days, every town had their own brewery. Lawrence had the Holohen's Brewery.
Mhm.
Remember, Lowell had the Harvard Brewery. There was another one called Pickwick Ale, and I think that comes from the
Oh, yeah.
Boston area. They call
Mhm.
it the poor man's whiskey,
Oh, yeah? I
because
didn't
it
know.
was beer, but it tasted. It was. I think they brewed it with a little extra alcohol. It had a little
Mhm.
bite to
Higher
it.
content?
Yeah, it was cheap too.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a market for everything in the world.
There
Cheap
is.
beer, expensive beer. But Holohan's, if you notice a lot of these pictures of the old taverns, there'll always be a sign, we serve Holohan's beer.
Right.
Because, mill factory workers, they don't want the expensive stuff. And I think they initiated around this area the GIQ.
Giant Imperial Quat.
Yeah, the Giant Imperial Quart, which is
Mhm.
the Canadian quart, which is 40 ounces of beer. So you pay
Mhm.
for a quart,
Right.
but you get an extra glass of beer out of that, which is
Mhm.
just fine if you're a working guy, it's the middle of the week, you have to go to work the next day. And one quart isn't enough. You don't want to have two.
Exactly.
You get two buzz, you got to wake up in the morning. So the GIQ is very popular.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they still sell it.
I think so.
I think
Yeah.
I've heard the kids talk about a GIQ.
And I remember the Holohan's had a great softball team.
That's right.
Remember
Oh,
the
yeah.
Hayden Schofield,
I
everybody
remember
called it the place then,
Mhm.
bordering the spigot. And that was when hundreds of people would turn out for a softball game. They probably
Oh,
still
yeah.
do. But their uniforms, I remember, were maroon and white.
Mhm.
The Sycamore Club, that was another great team.
Oh,
Those
yeah,
are the only
yeah.
two I remember. They were like white, yellow, and black. But Holohan's was always a contender.
And I remember I saw quite a few of those games, and there were some very good players.
There
It was
were.
inconsistent because they weren't professionals,
Mm-hmm.
but I saw some plays there that looked like they could have been at Fenway Park,
Yeah.
and some really excellent plays. And those were the days. There weren't all different kinds of softball. There was only one softball.
Right.
It was fast pitch,
Fast pitch.
and yeah.
It was the real, and there
Yeah.
was a women's softball team that would come by once a year. And the
Yeah.
pitcher would blow past everybody. No one
Oh,
could
yeah.
hit this woman.
There was
They used to travel the country.
I think that's the one that struck out Babe Ruth.
I
Oh,
bet she could have.
Or maybe that was another one. But
This-
there were women's softball teams that
Oh,
were
yeah.
amazing. Yeah.
And she pitched faster than any man. I mean, we used to go down there all the time for years.
Yeah,
There was no one like her. I don't
Yeah.
know her name, but she was amazing.
yeah, yeah. Next, please. Oh, here we go. Pinkies and the
Pinkies.
Brass Reel. Now, my uncle used to be a musician, and he used
Mhm.
to play in a lot of local bands. And he
He
told me
did.
stories of it. Oh, I'm playing a brass reel tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Better wear my raincoat.
Yeah.
This is make comments like that.
Right.
I think that these were really, really violent places. You could get really beat up in these places.
Mm-hmm.
Pinkies, and there were a lot of tough characters back then. Don't forget, these guys, they went through the Depression, and they went through
World
the
War II.
war. There were no employment programs or counseling services or anything. You go through them, you end up damaged. You just live with it.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of them ended up in these bars and acting out. It's not a casual bar you go
No.
to and have a relaxed beer, because you never know when one of these guys could erupt. There were a lot of real I grew up in Lawrence. There were a lot of
Yeah.
psychopaths
Mm-hmm.
in these tenements. Pinkies and the Brass Rail. yeah.
Middleton, and I think a lot of it was turf too.
I'm sure
you
it
didn't
was.
go. I know in the service, the military, Navy, each rate had its own bar, and you didn't go into
Yeah.
another rate's bar
Oh, boy, yeah.
unless you wanted to get beat up. It's probably the same, and same things.
Now I look
things
at all
don't
this
change.
stuff, I said, if I drink, I'm going to drink at home.
Yeah,
That's the only place I drink anymore. I drink at home. And I don't drink much anymore anyway. 2 beers on a Friday night, and that's it, I'm done.
mm-hmm.
Okay, next, please. Oh, here we are. You recognize this, Tom?
Oh
right?
yeah, classic
Lawrence,
building.
Lawrence Police Station. And another thing that came down, and can you imagine what a beautiful office building that would make?
It was the
beautiful.
parking lot for the Arlington Trust for a while.
Well, it's a parking lot.
It's still a parking
Yeah,
lot, I
yeah,
think.
Yeah, I think it is. Parking lot city.
Mm-hmm.
But look at the elegant. I think they call it a French mansard. Is that?
With the mansard roof. I know that.
I think that's what they call it, but I'm not
Mhm.
really sure.
Yeah, that looked like it was that
What a-
roof line.
Yeah, and notice everything went in the middle to late 60s. Everything went at once.
Mm-hmm.
Just total just destruction. And, you look what they do with Newburyport. They didn't really have such an aggressive urban renewal project there.
Right.
And they had a guy he came to Lawrence first, and he was going to do in Lawrence what he did in Newburyport.
Mm-hmm.
But I forget the story. What's his name? Bradshaw. He said, I think he said the politics was too intense. I couldn't get anywhere with the politics.
Right.
Figures.
Tammany Hall.
Tammany Hall. So he went
mentality.
to Newburyport and made this. Newburyport was scary. It looked like back in the late 60s, it looked like a Stephen King novel.
Whoa.
Yeah, Stephen King would have a movie in there.
Nice
so
setting.
Scary. But look what he built there. People come to vacation and see it.
Right.
So it was a missed opportunity. But life is full of missed opportunities. And we want to think positively. We don't want to miss too many opportunities. Young people, take note. Next, please, Kazi. Oh, Lawrence guy makes good.
Yes.
You recognize this guy, Tom?
Yeah, you told me, I when you told me who it was, and it dawned on me.
Robert Goulet.
Robert Goulet.
Now, if you're young, this name wouldn't mean anything to you. But he was French-Canadian, lived in Lawrence, Lawrence kid.
Yeah.
Born in Lawrence, lived in Lawrence till he was 13. I did a little look-up on him on Wikipedia. When he was 13, his father died. Both his parents were mill workers. His father was also an amateur wrestler, died
Wow.
when he was 13. He must have been a hard drinker. A lot of those guys were working in the mill and they drank and died young. And family moved to Canada and Alberta. I guess he was on a farm. And then when he came of age, I guess, he's one of those bright stars that just shine across the sky like a Roman candle. And people recognize his talent. Somebody did. And sent him to school in Edmonton, Alberta. Somebody gave him voice lessons. And you can hear his songs. You can hear it as a trained voice.
Right.
This is a guy that really studied voice. And in the 1960 or 61, in the Camelot years,
Camelot. Yep.
he got a big break.
Mm-hmm.
And the Broadway play Camelot was starring two superstars, Richard Burton and Julie Andrews. They're big household names. And as a rookie, he got a job, a starring role in that.
Lancelot, I think.
Lancelot, yeah. And a song, which I hated, but was very popular.
Oh,
If ever I should leave you.
Yeah, I like that
ever I
song.
should
That,
leave
that was
you,
that
it
was the high
shouldn't be
point
sing
of that play.
But I made him. He was on Ed Sullivan
Right.
after that, singing that song.
Oh, everything.
I
Dean Martin show, I
absolutely
think.
hated it. But anyway, it was that sentimentalist crooner type
Right.
song, But he came out with another one right after that, which was sung partly in Italian. Amore, scusami. Remember that?
I don't
I
remember
didn't
that.
It's about a guy. He's just flirting. He just wants a flirtation, just a light affair, and they fall in love. So he says, "Excuse me, amore, scusami." I'm
My love,
sorry,
forgive
my
me.
love. I didn't
Yeah.
want to make you fall in love with me. Beautiful. But it's a gorgeous song.
Yeah.
Gorgeous song. And he was on the radio. He was a household name.
Oh, he was.
And he symbolizes the Camelot era of the Kennedys, too. I think they got that era, that meme about Camelot from the play Camelot.
They did.
And he was a star in that. And he was a household name. But he peaked around the mid-'60s. But he was always, after that, always on TV. He was always still a household name. He married Italian-American actress, very famous in her own right, Carol Lawrence. Do you remember her?
Oh, yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
he was married to her. Died in 2007 in Las Vegas. He had a rare lung disease, and he was waiting for a lung transplant, which never came. And he passed away 2007. But this is a Lawrence boy.
Local
that
boy makes
made
good.
well. Wow.
He did well.
Okay, Lawrence rocks. Okay, we didn't say anything about Leonard Bernstein.
Lenny, oh, yeah. We have
But there's
some
another
shots
guy.
of him for another time.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah,
have
we
to
got some
save
shots,
some.
good shots
yeah,
of him.
for him. There's another story there, another Lawrence story there that you should know about. Okay, next, please. Tom, this is one of your photographs, right?
That's one of mine, yeah. The Immaculate Conception. That's gone also.
And the rectory. You know,
The-
that
the
lasted right into the 80s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Protectory is right next to it.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, look at that.
still doing very well, the Protectory.
And you have to, it goes to the heart of why people stopped all of a sudden going to church. You know, you could say, well, there was the abuse and the scandals, but I'd rather see that as a symptom rather than a cause. You know, it's something in people nowadays. We live in an era of scientific materialism, and it's harder, I think. Well, I don't know. We could probably have a talk over that over a few beers, but
Mhm.
I think that's something for another day, maybe. But anyway, very interesting, nevertheless. A beautiful building, and you hate to see them come down.
Oh, yeah.
Next, please, Cassie. Tom, this is one of your photos, right?
One of my, yeah.
Where is that?
Again, on Prospect Street, just off of East Haverhill,
Mm-hmm.
and by Vine Street, small Vine Street, tiny bakery. Not many people remember this, even, you know, some of the old Lawrence historians that I speak with. But it was a very cool, tiny building of its era. You know, a family could maybe make a living with the building that small and selling, you know,
That's
pastry and small things for.
That's what you see.
little
This is
bit.
the era of small business. You know, things were cheap. You didn't have such high energy costs, workers' comp, all the overhead you have, and all the permitting, of course.
Right.
I heard somewhere, I don't know if you told me or I heard it on the internet somewhere, that nowadays in California, it takes some places in California, it takes $50,000 for a building permit.
Wow.
I think maybe San Francisco, 50 grand, just
50.
for a building
A
permit.
permit. That's not
For a
even
house.
a liquor license or a
Yes,
know,
I mean,
80,000 for a-
I mean,
taxi
The-
badge.
in those days, you could start a little business so on a shoestring. You have a
Mhm.
few bucks, you have a good idea. Everything was cheap, and
Yeah.
that was a great era. You know, you go downtown, and just people are so happy, even though they weren't getting rich, to own their own business, and there's a sense of community. It didn't always not saying everybody always loved each other, but you had a sense of community.
Community and neighborhood.
Yeah. And nowadays, sense of community does not come from Facebook. A real sense of community comes up and close with people. Okay, young people, take note. All right, next, please. Oh, talk about community. What's
Community.
more community than this is another one of Tom's pictures.
Another one of mine, AAA Barbershop, Roy again. We had him last week. Just a classic old, I love old barbershops, diners. Barbershops and diners are my two favorites.
And
for
in
the
those
city.
days, barbershops were men's places.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm getting the call from Cassie. I think we're going to have to wrap it up here. They were men's places.
They were.
And women had hairdressing salons and men had barbershops. And the twain did not meet.
They're not meat.
A man did not go to a hair salon. Okay, because, you know, there weren't long hairs men didn't wear long hair in those days anyway.
Mhm.
Okay, later on, things change, of course. Okay, so I guess it's time to wrap it up. Tom, I've enjoyed this so much. I want to thank
Me
you. I
also.
mean, I have so much fun doing this, reminiscing. You know, at our age, we're going to be old geezers. You don't want to reminisce too much.
Right.
You got to have things to live for, and I know we do. But it's fun to look back sometimes. And
It
we have
is.
to look back at the good and the bad. Not too sentimental and not too strict either. There were a lot of things that were better back in the old days, and a lot of things I'm glad I'm alive now to enjoy them. Anyway, did we get the story straight? Did we offend you? This is the age of being everybody. I hope we didn't offend anybody, because if we did, let me know. If we got the story wrong, let us know. And you can contact us at Lawrence History Project, one word, lawrencehistoryproject@gmail.com. That's lawrencehistoryproject@gmail.com. Did we get the story right? How about Gloria? Anybody know what happened to Gloria? We're dying to find out. Gloria of the old Sack Club. Please let us know. We're trying to track her down. She's probably gone, but probably gone to that great club in the sky. But if she's not, we'd love to know. Okay, so I guess we'll wrap it up here. Tom, thank
Sounds
you so
good.
much for joining us.
Thank you
Hope
for
you'll
the
be with
invite.
us next time.
Yes, absolutely.